So you're running a blog on your Shopify store, and you really need Google to notice your posts. Well, today we're diving into a super powerful tool called Article Schema that helps you do just that. It might sound a little technical, but trust me, getting this right is an absolute game changer for your content.
Does this sound familiar? You spend hours crafting the perfect blog post. It's packed with great info, the images are stunning, and then you hit publish and crickets. It's so frustrating, right? You're creating fantastic stuff. So why on earth isn't Google paying attention?
Well, a lot of the time, the problem is just a simple communication barrier. Your blog is speaking one language, and Google needs a bit of a translation to really get it. Think of it like you need an interpreter. And in the SEO world, that interpreter has a name, structured data, or as we'll call it, schema.
Schema is basically this special vocabulary that you add to your website's code. Now, it doesn't change how your blog looks to your human visitors at all, but behind the scenes, it's giving search engines these crystal clear clues about what your content is, who wrote it, and most importantly, why it's a trustworthy source of information. The best way to think about article schema is like a cheat sheet that you get to hand directly to Google. Instead of making the search engine guess or try to figure out the details of your blog post, you're just laying it all out for them in this perfectly organized way that they can understand in an instant. The specific kind of code we're talking about here is called JSON-LD, and it's the format that Google loves most. It's really just a little script you pop onto your page that neatly labels all the important bits of your article. You know, the headline, the author, when it was published, and so on. It's like giving your content a proper, formal introduction to the search engine. Now, you might see two different terms floating around for this: article and blog posting. Don't let that throw you off. Blog posting is just a more specific version of article. So for a typical Shopify blog where you're doing how-to guides or product reviews, blog posting is exactly what you need. It's the perfect signal for that kind of content.
Okay, so how do we actually do this? It's really not as complicated as you might think. We can break down a really solid article schema setup into just 4 essential pillars. If you get these 4 things right, you are golden.
These 4 pillars kind of build on each other. We're going to start with the core content stuff, like your headline and dates. Then, we'll establish who's behind the content with the author and the publisher. And finally, we'll get to the image, which has a surprisingly important rule you have to follow.
First things first, the content properties. You need to clearly spell out the headline. That's just your article's title. But just as important are the dates. Date published tells Google when it was first posted, and date modified is your way of shouting, "Hey, I just updated this." This is absolutely massive for showing that your content is fresh and still relevant.
Okay, now this is super important. Defining the author and the publisher is critical for something Google calls EEAT. That stands for expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. This right here is how you prove to Google that your content is legit and can be trusted.
And here is a classic mistake I see all the time. For the author, you can't just type in a name. In the code, it has to be defined as a person object. And you know what's even better? Linking that to a dedicated author bio page on your website. That's how you really start to build up that person's credibility.
All right, next is the publisher. This is your brand, your store. You need to identify your business as the publishing organization. And here's a crucial detail that people often miss. You have to include a link to your official logo right inside this part of the schema. It connects the article directly back to your brand's identity. And now for our 4th pillar, the image. I want you to remember just one number. That's it, one number, 1200 pixels.
So why is that number so important? Because 1200 pixels is the minimum width Google requires for your image to be eligible for things like rich results and, even more excitingly, Google Discover. If your main image is smaller than that, you're just taking yourself out of the running for those amazing high-visibility spots.
Okay, so you've put in the work, you've built your schema. The absolute last thing you want to do is just cross your fingers and hope you got it right. You've got to validate it. Don't guess. Test your work to make sure Google can read it perfectly.
The good news is Google gives us free tools to do this. First, grab your blog post URL and pop it into the Rich Results test. You're looking for those beautiful words, article detected. After that, just keep an eye on the article report inside your Google Search Console to see how it's all performing over time. And as you're testing, just be on the lookout for these common little slip-ups: a missing publication date, an author that's just a name instead of that person object we talked about, or a missing logo in your publisher details. If you can fix these early, you're going to save yourself a ton of headaches down the road.
So we've gone through the what, the why, and the how. Let's bring this all back home and talk about the real payoff. Why should you go through all this trouble just to add a little snippet of code to your blog posts?
Because this is the payoff. Doing your schema right makes you eligible for rich results. You know, those search listings that really pop with images. It's your ticket to getting featured in Google Discover feeds. It directly tells Google you're an expert, building that crucial trust. And all of that leads to the one thing we're all after: better, more consistent visibility for the amazing content you work so hard to create.
You know your content is valuable. You know it helps your customers. By putting proper schema in place, you're not just tweaking a website, you're making it impossible for Google to ignore that fact. You're helping it finally agree with you. Thanks for joining this explainer.